Our first speaker in this keynote session is Jon Whitty. Some of you may, like myself, have known Jon for a number of years, and he's an interesting presenter. He currently is at the University of Southern Queensland. He researches into project managers and project management and what they do and how they do it, and he's well known, of course, for his view on complex project management, which was interesting and still is interesting. So without any further ado, Jon's going to talk to us about the private life of project managers, which could get most interesting. Thanks, Jon.
All right. All right, so good afternoon. When I say the private life, I don't mean what they get up to on the weekends. It's a bit more subtle than that. What I want to try and do here with this little session is to conduct a bit of research. Okay, so it's not all of you just sort of sitting there this afternoon. You do need to check on a bit of some equipment. So you need a pen, you need some paper, some blank paper if you can, and you need one of these. You got one of these? You can just try it out, see if it works. Okay, yeah, excellent. All right, okay. So, what I do is I try to observe project managers in the wild. Well, actually, that's incorrect. There are no such thing as wild project managers. Project managers are rather domesticated creatures. And what I do is I try to observe some of the behaviors. There's a presupposition in my talk, and that is that there's a social struggle. So I'll get onto the social struggle in a moment. But let me just briefly tell you what I'm going to do. The first sort of 10 or so minutes, I need to cover some groundwork. Right? We need to sort of do a bit of classwork and baseline the whole knowledge base. All right? And then after that, I'm going to expose you to what project managers do and say. So it might be useful for the next 45 minutes to forget that you're a project manager, if you are one. All right? In fact, it might be useful to forget that you're sort of human, really, and imagine you're more like a Martian observing what these bizarre creatures do. Okay? And then when you sort of see some of these comments that project managers present to me, in fact, then you might sort of see it in a slightly different light. So, project managers, there's a struggle going on. That is, they struggle to distinguish themselves from others. They struggle to distinguish that what they do in some way contributes in a large way. It's not so easy for them to do that. They struggle with the pressure of the environment that they work in, and they also struggle with the tools that they're provided with. So I'm going to start with a deep philosophical question, as all research things do. And it's not why did the chicken cross the road. The deep philosophical question is, why did the project manager draw the Gantt chart? All right, so was it A, because it's a good way to plan and control a project? Was it B, to appear organized and in control? Was it C, because it makes them feel good? Was it D, to make senior management and stakeholders feel good? Or was it E, because they chose to? All right, so just remember that R, we're going to try. So A, who thinks it's because it's a good way to plan and control a project? Okay, who thinks it's B, to appear organized? Interesting. All right, who, because it makes them feel good? C. Right, okay. To make senior management and stakeholders feel good? Okay, all right. And because they chose to? Right, okay, good. All right, excellent. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this little, I'm going to start picking away at some of these remarks, and perhaps we'll test them out. And then I'll revisit it right at the end, and we'll see if we've changed their mind or not, okay? So, struggling to be seen. So, it's rather easy to spot the carpenter. The incidence of carpenters in and around building sites is rather high. You can notice them because they're fiddling with wood and using power saws. Chefs in commercial kitchens, a high incidence of them. You'll find them, you can recognize them. They're standing in a uniform, they're conducting an order in their brigade around. Pharmacists, you'll find pharmacists, they're hanging around pharmacies an awful lot. They distinguish themselves differently from the rest of the pharmacy team because they dress differently. They either wear the whites and the others wear normal clothes, or the other way around. But you can always spot which one's the pharmacist. And the doctor's surgery. You'll notice a lot of people in and around mulling around doctor's surgeries, but usually the doctors are the ones with the stethoscope around their neck. Now, if you're a project manager, well, I picked on a construction one here so far. Where do you spot the project manager here? How does the project manager distinguish themselves from the rest? Is he the one in the hard hat? She the one in the hard hat and the vest? Are they the one that's less dirty than anybody else? The one with the roll of paper pointing at things? It gets a lot harder when you put them in a more sort of social circle like this. Now what's going on here? This is a project being managed. It's actually a global one that's going on, but it's rather hard to tell who's the project manager. Here's the scrum team. And they are scrumming or something, whatever they're doing. But whether they're making progress or not, it's rather hard to tell. The top one there, you can tell progress. You can see the building go up. The bottom one, it's rather hard. This person here, is this person managing a project? Actually, they're talking to stakeholders, but it's not that obvious. So, here's my premise for the question, and that is to try and identify, to try and stand apart, like a lot of the other crafts and trades have done. It's a lot easier, they've got a uniform. They've got some sort of tools. Well, project managers have some tools, but perhaps they also use them differently as well. So, struggle with the tools. I said that they were in the middle of a struggle. So, back in the Middle Ages, doctors used diagrams like this to conduct surgery. This one, there's loads of them. If you Google, you can find loads of them. This one was to do with astrological sort of data, and it mapped it against parts of the body. So basically what I'm saying here is that if you were going to come up with some sort of medical prognosis or treatment, you had to have astrological input. Because it depended on when you were giving this treatment and how you were giving this treatment and where the stars aligned, whether it worked or not. Okay? Then later along came Da Vinci and his anatomical drawings. Now these were based on dissection, actual observation of corpses, real people and so forth. All right? Now I know which one I'd rather my surgeon work from. Now, in project management, you get these diagrams. And I have to tell you, to me, that looks much more like an astrological one than it does out of direct observation. Because the trouble is these diagrams, you see, I try and chase these diagrams down to find out where they come from, and you can't. So there's a lot more to do with superstition and doctrine in this than there is with actual observation. Trying to define it and define what the words are and how it connects together more does not help. Okay? It just causes more confusion. So, what I do, I'll get back onto that one in a second. What I do is I take a different approach to the research. And my approach here is what I call an evolutionary approach. What I do is I look at why certain artifacts and things are there. What are the evolutionary drivers that cause them? So let me just go through this for a second. So this is the only set of words you're going to see on my presentation. But these are important. They were written in 1890 by Charles Darwin. So, evolutionary theory argues that species change over time. Darwin didn't invent evolution. It's been around since the Greeks. All he did is come and propose an idea of how it worked. Okay? A mechanism of how it works. Here's the key bit. In the struggle to survive, the competition for finite resources. There's a competition for finite resources. And those finite resources in the biological world are food and a mate. Okay? You don't get to go on and have extra species into the future if you don't find a mate. And actually, you only need to eat to find a mate. Right? So, finite resources. Only those species that are optimally adapted to their environment survive while others perish. Now, optimum is the key word here. You don't have to be fantastic. You don't have to be the best. You just have to be better than the rest. Right? It's the old classic story of the two hunters running away from the tiger, and the one stops to take his shoes off, and the other guy says, "You're not going to outrun him." He said, "It doesn't matter, I can outrun you. That's all I need to do." So individuals tend to produce offspring that have characteristics that are more like their parents than they are the competitors. So there's a hereditary part. It's tinkering, and you preserve what works, and you pass it on. David was talking about the guy with the vacuum cleaners earlier on today. And you know, he keeps the parts that work, tinkers, keeps the parts that work, tinkers, and on you go. And over time, improvements are preserved. Okay? So you hang on to the improvements as you go. So, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about cows and animals, and then I'm going to show you how that applies to project management. So how did the cow get to look like this on the right? Well, the cow got to look like that because in the 1600s they looked like this on the left-hand side. And basically, they are like this because the mechanism that drives it is preference. We have a preference for cow milk. So, as cows are milked, we keep the ones that produce the best milk, and we only breed from those, and we don't breed from the rest. And you do that with every 10% of the generation, and you end up with a cow that looks like udders on legs. Okay? Pigs. We do the same with pigs. Okay? There are almost, you can almost see the cuts of meat there now, can't you? Right? And that's all we've done. We've preserved the 10%, bred from only those, preserved the 10% from those, and on and on and on. We do the same thing with carrots. Carrots don't naturally look like this. Carrots look like that. This is a great experiment. Over 3 years, you can do this experiment in your garden. You can turn those carrots into these. And all you do is you pick the best ones with the taproot, nice orange colour. You reject the rest, just plant the seed of the next lot, keep the next 10% on the go, and they turn out like this. Okay? So, that's evolution in the domestic setting. So what Darwin said in his nice little book, Origin of the Species, he starts the reader off by romancing them into this. And then he says, well, this also has to happen to dogs. It also happens in the natural environment too. But there's no human selecting here. Remember the other, it was human preferences that were driving for milk, pork, and so forth, right? But what happens here is it's the natural environment that does the selection. It's the preference of the cheetah for gazelle meat that drives the gazelle to behave and look like it does. All right? So, because cheetahs eat fast food. It travels at 60 kilometers an hour, and if you can't catch it, you die. And if you die, you don't get to breed. Okay? So what happens is that trait of being built for an optimum speed, but it has a limit. And it has a limit because in order to be fast, you have to be light. You have to have a reduced bone structure. If you go too far, you end up having snapping bones. So that has survival implications. So there's an optimum point that it reaches. Same thing for gazelles. Gazelles have a preference not to be eaten by cheetahs. Okay, so they drive, now they're linked, and this is the thing I wanted to get at, is that these are linked together. They are tied, tightly bound. Okay, they're wired in. If that's natural selection, when you haven't got an awful lot of predators around to keep picking you off all the time, there is another form of selection that takes place, and that is sexual selection. Okay? Now, sexual selection is based on the fact that there is a competition for the scarce resources. Remember, the one was food, cheetahs chasing gazelles. The second one is finding a mate. Now, we'll admit to it, males compete for the attention of females. Okay? It happens in a human system, and it happens almost everywhere else. Now, what happens is the males needs to fire off. First of all, they either battle for the attention and access, right? So you have horns on animals that don't have natural weapons. And if you have animals that have natural weapons like big teeth, you develop shields. That's why lions have manes. It's to stop other lions biting their necks. Okay? Now, when the male gets access to the female, then it's about firing off some physiological buttons to sort of say, pay attention to me. Okay? You only got to show people an image first to start firing off buttons. I tested this out. I showed this to my wife. I said, do you find this guy attractive? Her answer was, oh, yeah. And then her next question was, why isn't that a picture of me? I said, oh, nail me about that. Okay. So what happens is first of all we have the battle that goes on here, and there's some really good research. Now and again you'll notice these caption things come up here, and I've got some papers to refer to if you're interested. This bird just doesn't look pretty. This bird actually fires off hormones in this. These colours do something physiologically to this bird. Okay? The bird calls do the same thing. So it's gestures that go on, they actually make a physiological change in the other member of the species. Okay? The classic example of this is the peacock. So the peacock's tail has nothing to do with getting away from prey, from predators, because the tail doesn't help you. But what it does do is it does attract females. There's some good studies. There's a classic one down here. And they just go, there's people that spend their time clipping 10% of the tails off peacocks to see which one gets selected and all that sort of stuff, okay? But basically what happens is this. The peacock does not grow a tail because the tail is a product of a fit and healthy bird. You have to have an awful lot of energy that you can expend to grow a tail like that. You have to be healthy, okay? So here's the second part I wanted to get. It's a cue. You can look at that bird and you can say that bird is a fit and healthy bird. It's genetically stable because it can grow a tail. Birds that aren't and then will produce poor offspring don't grow tails like that, okay? So we've got a cue, and this is what I'm going to, one of the sort of images that I show in a short moment, linking it to the project manager. By looking at that bird, the female gets hit with these physiological buttons get pushed, they breed, an offspring is produced. You either get a male that produces tails like that, or you get a female that gets attracted to tails like that. Okay? And on it goes in this direction. They get wired together. All right? Right. When sexual selection is played out, and also natural selection, competition for food, then there's kin selection. I'm only going to pass on this for a second, but I want to tell you this because this has got something to do with things like the PMI and the AIPM, okay? And it's not that these people look like Andrew. But what happens is this, is genetically, it's really hard when you're very genetically close to somebody else. It's hard, we don't use it so much now, but there's an awful lot of olfactory type communication going on here, smell, okay, and taste of each other. And basically, as far as this lion is concerned, because they are related, these are brothers, it's the same, it's me. It's not another one, it's me, okay? This one smells just like I do, okay? So what happens is the strategies evolve that give a benefit. They leverage off, we like to call it cooperation, but they actually leverage off the other one. And of course, because the other one is built in the same way, they leverage off the other, okay? So you get a cooperative type approach. All right. My last little thing now, I'm going to talk about these genes things because this finishes my background story, and then I'm going to talk about project managers. Now, what happens is this, is when this creature here gets selected for whatever reason it is, there's a set of codes that go, there's an instruction set that builds this bird. It built you. It turned you from one single cell in your mother into the thing that you are right now, okay? And there's a set of genes. Basically, there's a big long story here, but genes code for proteins, and proteins build you. Now, if I was to look in a peacock, if I was to look for a pile of genes that created fantastical tails, where would I find them? I'd find them in a community of peacocks. That's where they are. Or turkeys. I saw some at Taronga Zoo the other day. Now, ideas. So I'm going to move from biology into ideas and project management. Ideas have sex too. Here's two. There's ideas having sex, right? And there's their offspring. So what we've got here is not only do biological artifacts, bodies and so forth come up for selection and get preferences to them, but also ideas do as well. Now, ideas do not have genes, but ideas do have memes. It's a loose term, but basically what it means is there's an instruction set for creating something, okay? So a practice, whatever you have, whatever you do, the rituals that you have, there's a little algorithm that you run. It's in language usually, or a practice, that gets passed on. You either play it out yourself, or you can pass it on to other people. So I'm just going to give you a little example, and perhaps a way to remember this. And there, this one here, this is a meme of a paper airplane, okay? So we all know this one. Everybody's tried it out with kids. You probably learned this as a kid. Quick couple of folds and you produce it. Now, the plane is not the meme. The instruction of how to make one is the meme. Where's my thing gone? There it is. But here is another meme. And this is a far more complicated plane. All right? So let me just try this one. Right? Now, can you make that plane? Yeah. Right, there's your instructions there, right? But I bet if I ask most people to make a plane, they make one like that, because that's the optimum design. That's all you need to entertain a 6-year-old. Okay? So the selection of that meme is not based on performance of the plane. The selection of that meme is being based on just good enough to pass on and to remember and to make it scouts and whatever it is, and to pass on to kids. Now this has a similar sort of impact then when we look at project managers. So what I want to do is I want to take all that stuff about selection, sexual selection as well, and kin selection, and the idea of memes and the preferences given to these. See, you don't give a preference to them, you give a preference to the paper design, and behind it comes the instructions of how to make it. Right? You indirectly select it in the same way as you do with genes. So project managers have a habitat. I call it Projectistan. So it is the land or place of projects. The istan meaning land or place of. It's a projectocracy, which means that preferences are given to a particular class of people. Those people who have PMPs or Reg PMs, or they may have a company. It could have a maturity rating of some form. You recognize it. It's got all these landmarks around post-it notes. David was talking about post-it notes earlier on. People doing work breakdown structures. People doing Prince 2, conference rooms, round tables. Where in the 1940s could you find an office with round tables in it? What a ridiculous thing. And they're everywhere. So these structures start to appear that facilitate this. Okay? Where would you find a whole pile of genes that produce fantastical tales? You find them in a community of peacocks. Where would you find the memes that underpin project managers? You'd find them in all these things like books, courses, the language that you use. They're all embedded in it. Okay? And they show you how to unfold, whereas genes show you how to unfold cells to make you. The project management memes show you how to unfold various practices that you go through in project management. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do an experiment. Remember that paper and a bit of pen? A bit of paper and pen. So I want you to have that handy if you could. So here we go. We're going to look at individual behavior, and then I'm going to look at cooperative behavior and competition. But before I do this, I want to try and have a look at the projects in this room. So here we go. What I want you to do is I want you to imagine, bring to mind a project that you've recently worked on. Okay? Just think in your mind of a project that you recently worked on. It could be one that was really good, really cool, really bad, you hated it, whatever it was. But I just want you to have that project in mind right now. Okay? Now I'm going to ask you a question. I'm sitting with you and I say to you, what was managing that project like? And you say, well, John, managing that project was like, and I say, stop. I don't want you to tell me what it was like. I want you to draw it. Right? So that's what you've got to do. You've got 30 seconds to have a go. And you say, managing this project was, now you can't use any words. No words, no language, just a line drawing. Away you go. Managing this project was like what? Draw it. Managing this project was like. Everybody got something? Okay, turn to the person next to you and tell him what it was like. I'll move on, but aren't those project managers a bizarre lot? Let me tell you, Andrew talked about my ideas of complex project management. You don't even have to begin to start talking about a thing called a project and a complex project. There is so much variety in projects. It's unbelievable, right? And if you were to collect these here now, and I'd be interested if you wanted to put them on the chair at the end, and that's what I do, and the things I collect these things. But you find that there are some themes, but there is so much variety in what a project means to you and to you and to you, and what that experience of a project is. So, there's a whole raft of things that need exploring there. Never mind trying to tackle whether something's a complex project and something's not a complex project. It's much harder to answer than that. Some of the themes that come up with, here we are. Anybody draw an animal? Who drew an octopus? Did somebody draw an octopus? Excellent. There's always one. Is yours anatomically incorrect, like this one? This one, scarily, has 9 legs. Where did the 9 come from? See? Okay, snakes and ladders. There's another twist to this, the thrill and excitement. It's not good and bad, it's sort of thrilling, exciting. Some people draw a roller coaster. Anybody draw roller coaster type things? Snakes and ladders, things with good and bad in them. See, there's this nice sort of coasting, and then, whoa, there's a surge of excitement, and then, oh. This one. This was Alright, this guy here, I'll just tell you about, this is the project manager. Here's the stakeholder, you like this one. Here's the stakeholder. This guy said to me, this guy's standing, he's picking over some trivial stuff, and I'm trying to tell him there's a bloody tornado standing behind me. This way, I can't remember how this one started, but he sort of says, basically he ends up getting the guy to comply, right? So he's all smiley and happy. He says, right, and then off we go. We produce the chart, we come up with a Gantt chart, we get in the car, we drive off, we cross the finishing line, we deliver the project, we slam right into a tree. Right? That's what his experience was. So there's a huge amount of emotion in projects, okay? And there's an awful lot of behavior that goes on. Let me just do a nice little test for you now. I want to test how many memes, project management memes, you have on board, okay? So, here we go. Call out what these are. If you recognize this meme, tell me what it is. Triple constraints. All right, what's that one? Okay, what's that one? ESCO. What's this one? Gantt chart. Okay. All right. So let's go back through these. Right. You ask your mother. What does she say about that? What would she say? Triangle. Yeah. Pyramids. What about that one? What would she say to that? Bricks. That's what my mother says. See, you've got a particular way of looking at the world. Okay. Really, really particular way of looking at the world. And sometimes it's really useful to have other ways as well. This one here, this is how powerful this one, the time cost quality triangle. When you ask people, this is a really good meme. It's a really good meme that you pull out of your pocket when somebody asks you, what are the major drivers of projects? See, because your answer, you've just tried to draw some of this, and it's too hard. So you come up with that paper airplane. It's the simple one, right? And you just come up with there it is. That's the paper airplane of project management. Because it's an easy answer, and you know how ingrained it is? When people actually talk about it, they do it with their hands. Time, cost, quality. There's one there, I caught him on camera. Right? Okay, so what I try to do, I'm not going to go through this. What I'm interested in this is behavior. This is it. This is draw the Gantt chart. Why did the project manager draw the Gantt chart? This is behavior, and they become aware of it. But there's a whole ton of stuff that happens before. There's some sort of stimulus that caused it to happen. There's something going on in their brain at the time. Their hormones was doing something. There was some sort of culture, environment. Cultural environment is important. I'm an absolute atheist. You probably couldn't be any more atheist than I am. But when I'm in a European cathedral and the light is shining down, I think to myself, there could be something in this. But I can't. You're standing in the middle of coals and you can't consider a religious idea at all, right? So culture, context, the environment is important to how you take on board ideas. Let me give you another one. So this was done with our friends chimpanzees, but they are, remember, Darwin never said we evolved from chimps. They are our cousins. We have a distant ancestor with them. When you do that, you can do the same experiment, and it's done with humans, okay? But this is the best little diagram to show. So this is to do with dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and basically it's linked with goal-seeking behavior. reward systems, that sort of stuff, okay? So, so this was done with chimps. I'll explain this how this works, and then we'll apply it to project management. So, basically this is dopamine, boom, and they get a reward, okay? So this is, nothing happens. They're sitting in a little cage and there's a little light and nothing comes on, but sometimes a squirt of orange juice comes out and they think, wow, this is great. It just came from nowhere. Where did that come from? Dopamine level goes up, okay? And then they start trying to think, well, what did I do to get that to come out of there? And then they just try and make up all sorts of, things that they might have touched at the time. Then another experiment, little light comes on. So light comes on, and they get a reward, they get a squirt of juice. But the interesting thing is the dopamine's got nothing to do with the reward. It's got everything to do with the light. Because they think, I know what's going to happen next. Okay, they get this burst. Now, here's even more interesting. If you remove the reward, you still get dopamine hit from the light. All right? Now, there is an optimum point. If you take that reward away 50% of the time, you actually get a dopamine hit, which is twice the 100%. Okay? Because it's the expectation that it might or might not come. See? Oh, it's exciting. Oh, it's right? Now, if you make it 75 or 25%, it's lower. The optimum point is 50%. And so gambling casinos have figured this out. They know how to make huge odds against you winning look like 50%. Right? Because that's what you need to make it look like. Now, I said about project managers wanting to draw Gantt charts. Remember my couple of reasons why? Here you go. Gantt charts, I'm showing me, don't mean anything to me, but I feel pretty neutral. But the Gantt charts, my Gantt charts, really stress me out. There's a motion here tied up with an artifact. Okay? I've got all my ducks in line. All the parts eventually fall into place. He loves drawing Gantt charts. This guy said to me, I know it's not going to go like this, but I just like to get it down on paper. He really feels good. So partly it may be B to P organized, but this one definitely was about, here we are. I need deadlines. I thrive on deadlines. I even set deadlines when I don't have any deadlines. So I use them to push on and on and on. I get paid so the client can sleep at night. I hate deadlines. They keep me up at night, but at the same time, they give me a buzz. So there's this yin and yang type thing with the whole thing. So, remember I said about the triangle? Project managers draw the triangle. They do this. You watch one next. When you ask a project manager about schedules, you watch them do this, right? It's a Gantt chart sweep, I call it. Watch it. It goes like this, and then it starts off like that, right? I'll do it again. Watch. Yeah. Right? So we seem to be wired in. There's a wired in act. Now there's some great research that looks at, I was talking to other people earlier on about an egocentric language when you've got, so what I'm trying to say to you is there's some limits in some of the things we do. There's other ways of thinking about this. If you ask children to organize a storyboard of unfolding stories, and they have an egocentric language, that is, the language is structured with regard to themselves. So things are left to their body, right to their body, okay? Then they will organize the pictures, depending on what part of the world they're from, either left to right or right to left. But now if you go and take communities like Aboriginals, some of the Aboriginal languages where it's very event and external driven, and you ask them to do the same task in their environment, they don't do the same thing. So do you know what they do? Some people say a circle. No, it's not what they do. It's very clear what they do, and there's a clear pattern, and they line it from east to west, wherever they're sitting, because all stories, like all days, start in the east. Okay? And they line it up like that. Wherever they're sitting, no matter which way the table is, they line it up from east to west. What if we broke up projects into phases of the day? You know, your project was in morning phase, lunchtime. Yeah, all that sort of stuff. It's just other language that we could break in. But because of the way that we structured our language and the way we structured project management, it doesn't get a look. It doesn't break in. Okay, competitive behavior. So, project managers compete. Remember, we aren't project managers, of course. We're just looking at project managers. So I reckon there's, if I look at this, there's about 3 survival mechanisms that they use. 1, signaling the fitness to display cues, right? Second, they camouflage some of the work So this is not about themselves, this is about camouflaging the environment that they're in. And 3, they mimic some sort of desired professional identity. Now I want to add a caveat to this, and that is that I will say that it's not their fault. Okay? It's not their fault. The environment drives them. Because they have to survive in a particular environment, they end up behaving like this. Okay? So here's the... Is Lynn here? I don't know if Lynn's here. Lynn's done some stuff a few years ago that was really looking at senior management perceptions. And there's some key words that sort of comes out of this, and that is time planning, the ability, you see them in every job ad. Right? So they're sort of icons about how senior management see some of these traits and how they perceive them to be sort of some sort of positive perception of workplace performance. Harvey Mailer did this thing on the Gantt chart. People sort of say that one of the main icons of project management is the Gantt chart. The Gantt chart is the way you bring the project to the boardroom. And we sort of see these sort of type traits: the ability to plan, organize, schedule, and coordinate multiple tasks. How? Remember, the peacock demonstrates that it's a fit and healthy bird by growing a tail. How do you demonstrate when you haven't got a belt to hang around you or some sort of hard hat to wear? How do you demonstrate that you have the ability to plan, organize, and schedule? What tool do you use to show people? The Gantt chart. Right? So here it is. Some comments. Could you imagine me talking to a client without having a Gantt chart in my hand? I'd look really unprofessional. Everybody expects me to carry one. I got to the stage where I draw one just to keep the peace. If you want to make everyone happy, I just get the Gantt chart out and point at bits I know a lot about, and then I get back to managing the project. Can you honestly imagine me turning up to a progress meeting without one? And when I ask them, things like, when you look at this, what's your immediate response? And things are organized, controlled, methodical, systematic. Frustration in the fact that when you ask them, what does that mean? It's in the fact that they know the project's not going to turn out like this thing. Hope, and there's another one there, in the fact that it does. Right? Okay, so here's my image that I tried to sort of present here. And that this thing is sort of taking on a life of its own. Okay? Now, what I say to you is this. We're all having a laugh here, right? And I don't know if Microsoft Project are in the room. But you go and have a look at Microsoft Project, and you ask yourself the question, forget you're a project manager, and you ask yourself the question, all these new features that are on here, why are they on here? Are those features being driven by the preferences of project managers because they help the project manager manage the project better? Or are those preferences of these features on here because of preferences of somebody else? And that is because it turns out to be a better tool to point at senior management, okay? Or its stakeholders. That was a sobering thought, wasn't it? Okay, so camouflage. The point of what I'm trying to get at with camouflage, remember camouflage is another survival mechanism. And what it does is this, that if you present yourself as being messy and disorganized, the opposite to being organized and in control, then you might not look very professional at all. If you can't turn up, if you can't even iron your clothes and sort yourself out, then how the hell can you deal with a multi-million-dollar project, right? So, what's happening here is that people are conforming. Some of the jobs I have to do are impossible to estimate properly. So if I want to stay in the good books, I need a little bit creative on how I estimate and what I show and what I don't show. Now, the idea of what I show and what I don't show, Barry Toddhunter and myself, we run the master's course at USQ, and one of the things we do is we bring in guest speakers. And almost every one of them, and they don't really get to meet each other, but almost every one of them has this sort of little story in that they sort of say, I'm always careful with what information I release. I just got to be careful with it. Okay, mimicry. So, mimicry is some sort of image that's being created. Let me just talk about the natural world for a second, how this works, okay? So again, remember I was talking about selection, about we had that cheetah chasing the gazelle. So, trouble is mimicry and camouflage, these are our sort of human distinctions, okay? It doesn't really work like that because you can camouflage yourself by mimicking that you're a stick, being a stick insect, okay? So, what happens is this, is that whatever environment you're close to, so let's say you're a butterfly. If you are a butterfly and you're close to leaves and you look more like the leaf than another one does, then the other one gets eaten and you don't. So the direction you end up heading towards is that over and over and over, a number of iterations, the creature ends up looking more like its surroundings. And if your surroundings are a leaf, you end up looking like a leaf. Okay? So this is what we would call camouflage. Now, butterflies come in two types: those who taste good, those who don't. Remember I said about if you've got a lot of prey around, the second one kicks in, which is sexual selection. So sexual selection, this is why butterflies look like this. So this one, because these are poisonous. Now, prey stop eating these because they learn that if they eat them, they get sick. So they stay away. Now, when they're not picked off so much, they're allowed to develop the colours which push the buttons in the female, remember, okay? And they end up like this. Well, what a brilliant thing if you happen to be coloured like this.
Yeah.
You can camouflage yourself by looking like a poisonous one. Right? Now this one, this tastes great. But it looks like it doesn't. So it gets a survival advantage by looking that it tastes bad. Okay? So you can hide like this. You can mimic. You can look as if you've got the potential, but you really haven't. So, yes, there's a degree that project managers who don't use the system, even when it's not going to be effective, are seen not to have their project under control, as the project sponsors expect them to use it. So they comply with some form of system just because it's there, just because it makes somebody feel happy. At stakeholder briefings, I'm conscious that I need to look composed and in control. And then that's how they think the project's going. Of course, that's not how it's really going. Well, you've got to at least look the part, haven't you? You've got to at least look as though you can deliver. You've just been... this is a common one that comes up. It's pretty with Prince 2. I've just been for a job interview, and all they wanted to know was, was I familiar with Prince 2? So for 10 minutes, I spoke about like a Prince 2 guru. All right? So again, so there's loads of these. Again, complying. This one was good. I think project managers should be like doctors in some ways. You have to ooze confidence in what you're saying, even if deep down perhaps you don't really believe it yourself. And I'm not sure if I've got the guy with the magic wand. One guy said, I think it's on there somewhere, one guy said that being a project manager is a bit like being a magician. He said, you expect a magician, you can know a magician because he carries a hat and a wand. So I've got my wand is my Gantt chart, and I just turn up and I just point at the bits, but I get on with managing another guy I thought was a great comment. He said, I use my Gantt chart to keep my manager away from my door. So I can get on. I just give him the thing and then he leaves me to manage the project. So what is he using? There's another question. How is he managing? He's obviously managing without it. Okay, cooperative behavior. Okay, 3 minutes left. Cooperative behavior, so here we are. So this is, there are competitive advantages in being in a group. If you are a member of the wild species out there, birds or fish or whatever it is, there's hunting advantages in being as a group. You increase chances of finding a mate in a group. Now, I'm not saying that happens with a PMI, particularly the Sydney chapter. It might go on, there are rumours. But you've got this sort of cooperative behavior going on here where people are clubbing together. And what happens is, you see, one of the things that institutes do is they make you think that you're more related than you actually are. All right? Because we are more related to each other than other species change managers, aren't we? Right? And they got their own institute. Okay? So there's a sort of, because you've got to remember, for 200,000 years, the wiring that you have on board has not changed. All right? It's exactly the same. Nothing's changed biologically. We've gone through and we've scanned, they've scanned the human genome. They've scanned a whole other pile of species now. They can do it in under a week. And one of the massive things that we found out is that the neurons in here are exactly the same as the neurons in a fly. They are no different. Okay? It's just we have so many more of them. And from quantity comes quality. Okay? Cooperative behavior, here we are. You know, it's interesting why people buy in aspects. They sort of see their professional background as tying them together, but there's benefits. This guy was a member of the APM. They're going through chartered status or applying for chartered status at the moment, and basically his position was that you know, didn't really care really as long as he got a benefit out of it. Right? People, you know, might get a job. Again, it's like hunting for a job. Right? All right. So why did the project manager draw the Gantt chart? So A, do you think it's because it's a good way of planning a project? That's interesting. To appear organized and control. Alright, okay. Because it makes them feel good. Yes, that's in there as well. We know neurologically it does. To make senior management stakeholders feel good. And because they chose to, well, perhaps they don't choose. Perhaps there's a big push in order to drive them to it. Alright, so those are my my closing remarks are, look, I apply this evolutionary approach because it starts to uncover. They won't like me for this, right? But it pulls back the curtain, and you get to see all the stuff that's behind. Because there's a whole pile of stuff going on in project management that's just cloaked from us. A lot of our language and practices are. And when you take this approach, it starts to reveal this. And I put this slide at the beginning. You know, this is all my slides piled up in a triangle. See? But when you sort of put all the words here, you can't start to talk about things unless you talk about everything else. They're all stuck together. Because when you start to talk about emotions, you have to start to talk about how people react to various artifacts, the Gantt charts and so forth. All right. Thank you for listening.